Hello viewers, before we continue the part 1 of this amazing story, we would love for you to be part of our family. Subscribe today and turn on the bell notification. Now, enjoy! Anika's heart pounded with excitement as she stepped out of the small, dusty bus. The evening air was warm, filled with the distant sounds of life moving fast. She adjusted her small bag on her shoulder, gripping the little note her mother had given her, directions to her aunt's house. Her mother's last words before she left home played in her mind. Anika, my sister is rich now. You will live in a big house, eat good food, and go to school like her children. This is a blessing. 13-year-old Anika believed her mother. She believed in a better life waiting for her at Aunt Ifunia's house. She knocked on the gate, and a security man peeped through the small opening. "Who are you looking for?" he asked, his voice rough. "I'm here to see my aunt, Madame Ifunia." "My name is Anika," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. The man studied her from head to toe, noticing her faded dress and dusty slippers. Without a word, he opened the gate, leading her into a massive compound with shiny cars parked neatly in a row. Anika's mouth fell open. She had never seen such a house before. Before she could take it all in, the front door swung open, and there stood Aunt Ifunia, dressed in a flowing gown, her gold jewelry glinting under the porch light. But instead of the warm welcome Anika expected, her aunt's face twisted in displeasure. "You're just arriving now? I sent your mother transport money last week. What took you so long?" Ifunia snapped. I came as soon as I could," Anika stammered. Ifunia scoffed. "Come inside, and wipe your feet. Don't dirty my floor." Inside, the house was even more beautiful. White tiles, shining chandeliers, and the scent of expensive perfume filled the air. Anika's cousins sat on a long couch, pressing their phones, barely sparing her a glance. A man walked in then, tall, dark, and well-dressed. Her uncle. "Oh, the village girl has finally arrived," he said, smirking. His eyes scanned her the same way someone would look at an old shoe. "I hope she won't be a liability." "She will be useful," Ifunia said sharply. "Very useful." That night, Anika lay on a small mattress on the floor of a tiny room meant for storage. No bed, no blanket. The cold floor bit into her skin as she curled up, confused. Her mother had said she would live like family, but from the way her aunt spoke, from the way her cousins ignored her, she wasn't sure anymore. Tomorrow would tell, but deep down, she already knew. Let me know if this first part is gripping enough or if you want any tweaks before we continue with part 2. Anika woke up to a sharp knock on the door. "Wake up! Do you think this is your mother's house where you sleep all day?" Ifunia's voice was sharp and impatient. "Go to the kitchen and wash the plates before my children wake up." Rubbing sleep from her eyes, Anika hurriedly stood up, her back aching from the hard floor. She moved quickly, remembering the disappointment in her aunt's eyes the night before. As she stepped into the kitchen, she gasped. The sink was piled high with dirty plates, greasy pots, and leftover food. Her hands trembled. Back home, she helped her mother cook and clean, but this was different. She picked up the first plate and started scrubbing. The smell of dried soup and oil clung to her nose, but she kept going. She wanted to prove to her aunt that she was useful, that she deserved to be here. Hours passed before she finished. Just as she was about to sit down, a loud voice called out, "Anika! Sweep the living room and arrange the chairs. My guests are coming soon, and I don't want to see any dirt." Ifunia shouted from upstairs. Anika sighed but picked up the broom. She swept, wiped, and arranged until the whole house was spotless. She barely had time to rest before her cousin, Chisholm, walked in, chewing gum lazily. "Anika, go and iron my uniform." "I don't want any lines on it," Chisholm demanded. Anika hesitated, but Chisholm's eyes darkened. "Did you just say but? Are you stupid? If you annoy my mom, she will throw you out." Fear gripped Anika. She nodded quickly and went to do as she was told. By evening, her legs felt like they didn't belong to her anymore. She had done laundry, washed the bathrooms, and even helped cook. Yet, nobody asked if she had eaten. She finally sneaked into the kitchen and took a small piece of bread left on the table. Just as she was about to take a bite, a voice thundered behind her. "Thief! You came to steal food now, Abi?" Ifunia's husband, Namdi, stood in the doorway, his face twisted with anger. "No, sir, I..." "Shut up. So after all the food you ate in the village, you came here to eat us dry? Drop that bread now." Tears welled in Anika's eyes as she slowly placed the bread back on the plate. Her stomach growled in protest, but she swallowed her hunger along with her tears. As she walked back to her tiny room, she wondered, is this really my new life? Days turned into weeks, and Anika's life became a never-ending cycle of chores and insults. Morning till night, she scrubbed, washed, cooked, and served. Yet, no matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. One afternoon, as she was mopping the floor, Chisholm walked in and kicked over the bucket of water. "Oops," she said with a smirk. "Clean that up." Anika clenched her fists but said nothing. She picked up the rag and started again. She had learned that talking back only made things worse. Later that evening, Namdi returned home with some friends. The house had to be spotless, and the food had to be perfect. "Anika!" Ifunia snapped. "Set the table quickly, and make sure you don't embarrass me." Anika moved swiftly, arranging plates and serving dishes. As she poured juice into a glass, her hands trembled from exhaustion, and the cup slipped, crashing to the floor. Silence filled the room. "You stupid girl!" Ifunia screamed, grabbing her by the ear. "Do you know how much that glass costs?" Anika's eyes burned with tears as she mumbled, "I'm sorry, Ma." "Sorry for yourself. No dinner for you tonight. Now clean this mess before my guests arrive." As Anika knelt, picking up the broken pieces, she heard laughter from the living room. Namdi's guests were enjoying themselves, eating the food she had cooked, sitting in the home she cleaned, while she, tired and hungry, picked up shards of glass from the floor. That night, as she lay on the cold, hard floor of her tiny room, her stomach empty and her body aching, she wondered if her mother had any idea what was happening to her. Maybe she should write to her, but would it change anything? The morning sun streamed through the window, but Anika didn't feel its warmth. She forced herself up, despite the pain in her arms and legs. Today would be like every other day, endless work and insults. She was halfway through scrubbing the bathroom when Ifunia stormed in. "Anika! What is this nonsense?" she barked, pointing at a tiny speck of dirt near the sink. I was just about to clean it, Ma," Anika stammered. A hot slap landed on her cheek. "Liar! You're lazy and ungrateful. If you don't finish this in 10 minutes, you won't eat today." Tears burned her eyes, but she quickly turned back to scrubbing. She had learned not to cry in front of them. It only made things worse. Later that evening, Namdi had visitors again, and as usual, Anika was forced to serve them. She carried a tray of drinks into the sitting room, keeping her head down. "Ah, Namdi, this your house help looks too small for all this work," one of the guests said, watching Anika struggle to balance the tray. Namdi chuckled. "She's fine. She needs to learn how to be useful in life." "What about school?" the guest asked. "Shouldn't she be in school at her age?" Ifunia rolled her eyes. "School? Who will pay for that? She came here to help, not to waste money on school." The guest looked at Anika, then back at Namdi. "This is not right. Every child deserves an education. You people are treating her like a slave." Anika's heart pounded. No one had ever defended her before. She stole a glance at the man. He looked kind, different from the others who ignored her suffering. Ifunia scoffed. "This is a family matter. Let's talk about something else." But the man wasn't done. "Namdi, I insist. I will personally sponsor this girl's education. You cannot refuse." The room fell silent. Anika's hands shook. Was this real? Would she finally get a chance to go to school? Ifunia's face darkened, but she forced a smile. Ah, Olga Emika, no problem. Since you insist, she turned to Anika with a cold glare. You better not waste this opportunity. Anika could barely breathe. For the first time in a long time, hope flickered in her heart. Anika sat in the corner of the room, her heart still racing. Was this really happening? Someone was finally standing up for her. She could see the anger in Ifunia's eyes, but she didn't care. Ifunia forced a smile. Ah, Olga Emika, no need to rush. She has many chores to do. Maybe next month. No, Emika cut in. I insist. A child's education is not something to delay. Let's go, Anika. Anika quickly wiped her hands on her wrapper and followed him, her heart pounding with every step. She was going to school. They arrived at a modest but decent school in the heart of Enugu. The headmistress, a strict-looking woman with kind eyes, welcomed them. So, you want to start school? She asked Anika. Yes, Ma, Anika replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you know how to read and write? Anika hesitated. A little, Ma. I used to go to school before I came to stay with my aunt. The headmistress nodded. We will place you in the right class. Work hard, and don't disappoint us. Anika nodded eagerly. I won't, Ma. Thank you. Emika paid the fees and bought her school supplies. For the first time in years, she held brand new books in her hands. She couldn't stop staring at them as they left the school. Emika turned to her. Anika, this is your chance to change your future. Make good use of it. Tears welled up in her eyes. I will, sir. Thank you. When they returned home, Ifunia barely spoke to her, but Anika didn't care. She had something bigger to focus on now. The next morning, she wore her new school uniform. It felt strange but wonderful as she stepped out of the house. Chisholm sneered. Look at you. Do you think going to school will change anything? You'll always be our house girl. Anika didn't reply. She just walked past her and out the door. For the first time in years, she felt free. Anika stepped into the school compound, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it was happening, she felt out of place. Would the other students laugh at her? Would they know she had been a housemaid? She gripped her books tightly as she walked into the classroom. The teacher, a middle-aged woman with a gentle smile, gestured for her to come forward. Class, we have a new student joining us today. Her name is Anika. Please make her feel welcome. A few students whispered among themselves, but one girl, Ada, smiled at her. Come, you can sit next to me. Relieved, Anika took the seat beside Ada. The lessons began, and though she struggled at first, she listened carefully, determined to catch up. She would not waste this chance. Days turned into weeks, and Anika poured her heart into her studies. She woke up earlier than everyone else to complete her chores before school. No matter how tired she was, she refused to give up. Her teachers noticed her determination, and soon, she was catching up with her classmates. One afternoon, as she was solving a math problem on the board, the teacher clapped. Well done, Anika. That's correct. Keep it up. For the first time in a long time, she felt proud of herself. But back home, Ifunia and Chisholm were not pleased. So now you think you're better than us because you go to school? Chisholm sneered one evening as Anika sat in the corner, revising her notes. Anika kept quiet. She knew better than to argue. You better not fail, Ifunia added. After all the trouble Olga Emika went through for you, don't disgrace us. Anika nodded, but deep inside, she made a silent promise. She would not fail. She would make something of herself, no matter what it took. Anika's routine became a cycle of hard work, endurance, and silent victories. She would wake up before dawn, complete her chores, and rush to school, always making sure not to give Ifunia or Chisholm any reason to complain. But no matter how much she tried, they still found something to criticize. One evening, as she was washing the dishes, Chisholm walked into the kitchen with a smirk. "You think going to school will change anything? You're still a servant in this house." Anika ignored her and continued scrubbing the plates. She had learned that responding only gave Chisholm more power. "Look at you, acting like you're special. Let's see how long you last before you drop out." Anika swallowed hard, refusing to let the words sink in. Deep down, she knew the truth. Education was her only way out. She would never quit. The next morning at school, her teacher announced a big test. "This exam will determine your ranking in class," the teacher said. "Study well." Anika felt a mix of fear and excitement. She had been studying every night, but was it enough? That evening, she sat outside under the dim security light, reading her notes. Her eyes were heavy, her hands ached, but she pushed through. Weeks passed, and the results were finally out. The teacher stood in front of the class. "I want to congratulate our top 3 students. In 3rd place, we have Chijioke. In 2nd place, Ada. And in 1st place." The teacher paused, scanning the paper. "Anika!" Gasps filled the classroom. Anika's eyes widened. Had she heard correctly? The teacher smiled. "Well done, Anika. You've made great progress." For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. She had worked for this moment. She had earned it. That night, as she cleared the dinner table, Ifunia's voice cut through the silence. "So you think you're smart now? Don't let school get to your head. Let me warn you, Anika, don't forget your place in this house." Anika simply nodded, but deep inside, she made a promise to herself. She would rise above all of this, no matter what it took. Anika's victory in class only made life harder at home. Ifunia and Chisholm were relentless, looking for any excuse to frustrate her. They made her do extra chores, barely let her sleep, and even tried to hide her school books. But Anika refused to break. One evening, as she ironed their school uniforms, Chisholm snatched Anika's notebook from the table and flipped through it carelessly. "So you think you're a genius now? What are you even writing in this book?" she mocked. Anika remained silent, her hands gripping the iron tightly. She had learned to pick her battles. Chisholm scoffed and tossed the book onto the floor. "Clean that up, house girl." Anika bent down, picked up her notebook, and dusted it off. She would not let their words stop her. At school, her teacher, Mrs. Okafo, noticed how tired Anika looked. "Anika, is everything okay? You seem distracted." Anika hesitated before nodding. "I'm fine, Ma." Mrs. Okafo didn't believe her, but she didn't push. Instead, she handed Anika a small packet of biscuits. "Eat something. You're doing well, but you need strength too." Anika's eyes welled up. It had been a long time since anyone showed her kindness. "Thank you, Ma." That evening, she studied harder than ever. The upcoming term exams were crucial, and she refused to let anything hold her back. She wrote notes in the dim glow of the security light, her mind sharp despite her exhaustion. Weeks later, the exam results were announced. Anika had not only topped her class again, she had the highest score in the entire school. Her teacher beamed with pride. "Anika, the principal wants to see you." Anika's heart pounded as she entered the office. The principal, an elderly man with a warm smile, gestured for her to sit. "Young lady, you have a gift. Your hard work is inspiring. We have decided to give you a full scholarship. Your school fees, books,